Ambassador Victoria Blackwood stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Concordia, watching the crystalline spires of the Kraxan capital world shimmer beneath twin purple suns. After 30 years of representing humanity's interests across the galaxy, she knew this mission would be her last, one way or another. "They're stalling again, Ambassador," said James Harrison, her deputy and protege of 5 years. His usually composed features betrayed a hint of frustration. Third delay in as many hours. Victoria turned from the viewport, her silver hair catching the starlight. "They fear what we've discovered, James. The Kraxan Empire has maintained their dominance through carefully crafted lies about their technological superiority. Our recent breakthroughs threaten that narrative." The Concordia's comm system chimed. A holographic projection of High Commander Vexthor materialized, his scaled face an expressionless mask, 4 yellow eyes unblinking. "Ambassador Blackwood, the High Council regrets to inform you that today's session must be postponed. A matter of internal security requires our immediate attention." Victoria stepped forward, her voice steady but sharp. "High Commander, this is the 7th postponement. Earth's evidence of your illegal weapons testing in the neutral zone cannot be ignored forever. The other galactic powers will soon learn." "Choose your next words carefully, Ambassador," Vexthor interrupted, his upper lip curling to reveal serrated teeth. "Accusations without proof are dangerous things." "We both know the proof exists," Victoria replied. "The question is whether the Empire wishes to address this diplomatically or risk the consequences of exposure." The hologram flickered as Vexthor leaned forward. "You overestimate your position, human. The Empire has ruled the stars for millennia. Your species barely learned to split the atom a few centuries ago. Age does not equate to wisdom, Commander, nor does it guarantee continued dominance." The transmission cut off abruptly. James moved to Victoria's side, his hand instinctively checking the small defensive shield generator at his belt. "They're not going to negotiate, are they?" Victoria shook her head. "No, but we needed to give them the chance. Humanity's conscience must be clear in what comes next." She turned to her datapad, fingers flying across the surface. "Transmitting our final report to Earth now. All the evidence, all the documentation of their violations." The encryption shoaled. The ship shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared as the Concordia's eye announced. "Multiple Kraxan warships decloaking. Weapons locked on. They're going to make it look like an accident," Victoria said, her voice calm even as she worked faster to complete the transmission. "A tragic malfunction leading to a diplomatic incident. Tale as old as time." James grabbed her arm. "We need to get to the escape pods." "No time." Victoria pressed the final command sequence. "Transmission complete. James, listen carefully. What happens next will change everything. The Empire believes they can intimidate humanity into submission. They're wrong, but the response must be measured, calculated. Promise me you'll counsel patience when." The first plasma torpedoes struck the Concordia's shields. Victoria stumbled but kept her footing. "Promise me, James." "I promise," he said, gripping her hand. "But we have to." The second barrage turned the ship's hull to molten slag. As emergency force fields failed and the void of space reached for them with cold fingers, Victoria Blackwood's final act was to push James toward the nearest escape pod. The automatic ejection sequence activated just as the Concordia broke apart. James watched through the pod's viewport as the ship disintegrated, taking his mentor and friend with it. His pod's computer chirped, "Emergency beacon active. Distress signal broadcasting." Hours later, as a neutral merchant vessel retrieved his pod, James finally allowed himself to weep. But beneath the grief, a cold resolve took root. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They believed killing Victoria Blackwood would silence humanity's accusations. Instead, they had given her words power beyond anything she could have achieved alive. Within days, the evidence she transmitted reached every major power in the galaxy. The Empire's denials rang hollow against the mountain of proof. On Earth, the usually fractious nations found themselves united in unprecedented ways. Victoria's death became a rallying cry, a symbol of the Empire's contempt for diplomacy and justice. As the United Earth Defense Council convened, James stood before them, his voice carrying the weight of his promise. Ambassador Blackwood believed in giving peace every chance to prevail. That chance has now passed. The Empire mistakes our patience for weakness, our restraint for fear. They believe we will bow before their power as so many others have done. He paused, looking at each council member in turn. But they don't understand humanity. We don't bow. We don't break. And we never, ever forget. The Empire has ruled through fear for thousands of years. It's time they learn to fear us. The council chambers erupted in agreement. As James walked out into the night, he looked up at the stars. Countless points of light in the darkness. Soon, many of them would burn with the fires of war. But first, humanity would prepare. The Empire thought they had witnessed human weakness. They would learn it was only restraint. And when that restraint finally broke, the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Amara Santos stood before the holographic display of the Craxan Empire's defensive lines, her dark eyes scanning the supposedly impregnable network of fortified worlds and automated defense platforms. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the Concordia, and humanity had used that time well. "Show me the thermal readings from the Arcturus sector again," she commanded. The AI complied, highlighting a complex web of energy signatures. Most military strategists saw an unbreakable wall. Amara saw gaps, invisible to those who relied on traditional warfare doctrine. Admiral, her XO, Commander David Reeves, entered the war room of the Earth flagship Defiant. The prototype stealth drives are ready for field testing. Engineering says they've solved the heat dispersion issue. Amara nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. The Empire expects us to attack like everyone else. Head on, matching fleet for fleet. They believe their numerical superiority makes them invulnerable. Their arrogance is their weakness, David agreed. But even with the stealth technology, we're outnumbered 10-1. Numbers mean nothing if you can't find your enemy. Amara expanded the hologram, revealing dozens of small markers representing Earth's new ghost fleet. How do you defeat an empire that's ruled through fear for millennia? You make them afraid. The first phase of Operation Shadowfall began 3 days later. The Craxan supply world of Nexus VI disappeared from Imperial networks without warning. No distress calls. No signs of battle. When Imperial investigators arrived, they found the planet's orbital defense grid intact but dormant. Every weapons factory, shipyard, and military installation on the surface had been surgically destroyed. Civilian areas remained untouched. The message was clear. Humanity could strike anywhere, at any time, with absolute precision. Panic spread through Imperial command. The Craxan military doctrine relied on overwhelming force and ironclad control. But how do you control an enemy you cannot see? On the bridge of the Defiant, Amara received an unexpected transmission. The source signature identified it as coming from within Craxan space, but on a frequency unknown to Imperial forces. "This is Krelvor, first speaker of the Liberation Front." The encrypted message began. "Your actions against the Empire have not gone unnoticed. There are those among our people who have long awaited such a challenge to Imperial dominance." Amara exchanged glances with David. The existence of a Craxan resistance movement was something Earth's intelligence had suspected, but never confirmed. "Speak your piece," Amara replied. "We can provide you with critical intelligence, patrol routes, command codes, shield frequencies. In exchange, we ask only that you remember not all Craxan support the Empire's brutality. It could be a trap. The Empire was known for its deception. But Amara had not risen to command Earth's forces by avoiding calculated risks. Actions speak louder than words. First speaker, prove your intent. The next day, Earth's analysts reported a strange phenomenon. Imperial communications were experiencing unexplained failures. Defense platforms were going offline for crucial minutes before restoring. Small but critical gaps were appearing in the Empire's sensor networks. "They're actually helping us," David said, reviewing the reports. "But can we trust them?" "Trust is earned," Amara replied. "For now, we verify everything. But if they're genuine..." She let the thought hang in the air. An internal resistance movement could change everything. The Ghost Fleet struck again, this time hitting 3 targets simultaneously. Imperial shipyards at Deltarix, weapons factories on Chorus Prime, and the Empire's largest fuel processing facility in the Vega sector. Each strike was precise, devastating, and completely untraceable. The Empire's response was predictable. They lashed out blindly, increasing patrols and fortifying their remaining facilities. But they were defending against traditional attacks, while Earth's forces slipped through their defenses like shadows. In her private quarters, Amara reviewed casualty reports. The Ghost Fleet's surgical strikes had minimized civilian deaths, but war always carried a cost. She thought of Victoria Blackwood's final message, the need for measured response, for calculated action rather than blind vengeance. "Computer, display casualties from the Nexus VI operation." The numbers appeared before her, 0 civilian casualties. The precision strikes had worked perfectly. Earth was not just winning battles, they were winning the moral war. A priority alert flashed across her screen. Imperial fleet movements suggested they were planning something massive. A desperate gambit to force Earth's forces into open combat. "Admiral," David's voice came through the intercom. "You need to see this." The tactical display showed hundreds of Imperial warships converging on a single location, the Helios Nexus, a critical junction of hyperspace lanes. The Empire was gathering its strength for a decisive battle. "They're trying to draw us out," Amara mused. "Force us to defend the Nexus or lose control of key supply routes." "It's a trap," David stated. "Of course it is," Amara smiled. "And we're going to spring it. Alert all commands. Operation Shadowfall enters Phase 2. And send a message to our new Kraxan friends. Tell them if they want to prove their commitment to the cause, now's the time." As orders went out across the Ghost Fleet, Amara returned to the holographic display. The Empire thought they were forcing humanity's hand. Instead, they were walking into a carefully laid web. The battle for the Helios Nexus would change the course of the war. But not in the way the Empire expected. Because while they prepared for a traditional space battle, humanity had something else in mind entirely. The real question was, how do you defeat an enemy that can't adapt? The answer: you changed the rules of engagement completely. And humanity was about to rewrite the book on space warfare. The Helios Nexus blazed with the light of 3 dying stars, their gravitational dance creating the unique spatial conditions that made this sector so strategically valuable. Captain Riya Patel watched from the bridge of the stealth cruiser Silent Dawn as the massive Imperial Armada assembled, their hulls reflecting the stellar light-like scales of some cosmic servant. 423 capital ships, her tactical officer, Lieutenant Kai Nakamura, reported, plus support vessels. The largest Imperial fleet concentration we've ever seen. Riya nodded, her expression neutral despite the gravity of their situation. The Silent Dawn and its sister ships had been observing the Imperial buildup for 3 days, gathering data for Admiral Santos's master plan. "Status of the quantum entanglement network?" she asked. "All nodes are in position and synchronized," Kai replied. The Kraxan resistance came through. Their sabotage teams have planted the QE beacons throughout the Imperial formation. The plan was audacious, perhaps even insane. But that's what made it brilliant. The Empire's entire strategy relied on forcing a conventional battle. They never considered that humanity might have an entirely different type of warfare in mind. "Message from Admiral Santos," her communications officer announced. "Operation Checkmate is go." Raya took a deep breath. Signal all hands. Initiate Phase 1. Across the Helios Nexus, dozens of Earth vessels decloaked simultaneously, but not the Ghost Fleet's main combat ships. Instead, they were automated drones, each broadcasting the signature of a heavy cruiser. The Imperial fleet reacted exactly as expected, spreading out to engage what they thought was humanity's main assault force. Imperial fleet is moving to standard combat formation, Kai reported. They're taking the bait. Begin Phase 2, Rhea ordered. The quantum entanglement network activated. Hundreds of tiny beacons, planted by resistance saboteurs throughout the Imperial fleet, began transmitting. Each one created a microscopic spatial distortion, harmless individually, but when synchronized across hundreds of points. The effects were instantaneous and devastating. Carefully calculated spatial distortions rippled through the Imperial formation, disrupting their shields and sensor systems. Ships that had relied on the same defensive technologies for centuries suddenly found their protections useless. Imperial communications are in chaos, her comm officer reported with barely contained excitement. Their command and control network is fragmenting. That was the signal the Ghost Fleet had been waiting for. The real Earth warships decloaked. Not at the front of the Imperial formation where they were expected, but within it, having slipped through the gaps created by the spatial distortions. All ships, weapons free, Rhea commanded. Execute precision strikes on designated targets. The Silent Dawn and its fellow ships opened fire, their advanced targeting systems choosing weak points identified by weeks of careful observation. Imperial ships, their shields weakened and their formations disrupted, began to fall. But the Empire hadn't ruled space for millennia by being easily defeated. Imperial commanders, realizing their vulnerability, began ordering their ships to break formation and engage at will. The carefully orchestrated trap threatened to dissolve into chaos. They're adapting faster than expected, Kai warned. Rhea allowed herself a small smile. Good thing we planned for that. Signal the resistance. Execute Phase 3. Throughout the Imperial fleet, sleeper programs planted by Kraxan resistance members activated. Emergency systems engage, forcing ships into automated diagnostic modes. Power cores initiated unexpected shutdown sequences. Weapons systems went offline for critical maintenance. Not every ship was affected. The resistance hadn't been able to infiltrate them all. But enough were compromised to throw the Imperial response into complete disarray. Imperial fleet cohesion is breaking down, Kai reported. Their formation is collapsing. The battle devolved into exactly the kind of chaos humanity had trained for. While Imperial ships struggled with unresponsive systems and conflicting commands, Earth vessels struck with precision and coordination. The Ghost Fleet's smaller, more agile ships danced through the disorganized Imperial formation, striking critical systems before disappearing back into the chaos. On her tactical display, Rhea watched as the massive Imperial fleet began to fragment. Some ships retreated. Others fought on in isolated groups, while many simply drifted, their systems compromised by resistance sabotage. Message from Admiral Santos, her comm officer announced. Phase 4 is authorized. Rhea took a moment to appreciate the elegance of the complete strategy. The Empire had expected a battle of brute force. Instead, they got a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Launch the quantum torpedoes, she ordered. The new weapons, developed in secret by Earth's scientists, streaked across space. Unlike conventional warheads, these created localized fields of quantum instability. When they detonated among the remaining Imperial ships, the effects were catastrophic. Vessels caught in the quantum fields found their very atomic structure briefly destabilized. Some recovered, but many simply came apart at the molecular level. The remaining Imperial commanders had seen enough. Retreat signals flashed across space as the once mighty armada began to flee in all directions. The Empire's greatest fleet had been shattered not by superior numbers or firepower, but by human ingenuity combined with their own people's desire for change. Imperial forces are in full retreat, Kai confirmed. We've done it, Captain. But Rhea knew this wasn't just a military victory. The Battle of Helios Nexus represented something far more significant. The Empire's aura of invincibility was broken. Throughout their territory, oppressed species would hear how their mighty fleet had been humbled by human cunning and Craxan courage. "Send word to Admiral Santos," she ordered. "The Nexus is secured. Request permission to begin Phase 5. As she waited for the response, Rhea watched the retreating Imperial ships. The Empire had fought to teach humanity a lesson about power. Instead, they learned one about innovation and adaptation. But the war was far from over. The Empire would regroup, analyze their defeat, try to adapt. But that's what they didn't understand about humans. By the time they figured out how to counter these tactics, humanity would have already developed new ones. The real question was, how do you fight an enemy that evolves faster than you can adapt? The Empire was about to find out. Dr. Marcus Cole had spent his entire career studying Craxan technology, but nothing had prepared him for what his team discovered in the abandoned Imperial Research Facility on Nemesis VI. The holographic data streams floating before him told a story that made his blood run cold. "This can't be right," he muttered, running the analysis again. "The genetic markers, they're human." His research partner, Dr. Nadia Volkov, looked up from her own terminal. She had been analyzing a different section of the recovered Imperial database, but her ashen expression suggested similar findings. "They've been experimenting on human colonists," she confirmed. "Not just recently, for decades, long before we even knew they existed." The implications were staggering. The Empire's technological superiority, their advanced biotech, their seemingly superhuman abilities, all of it built on the suffering of countless human test subjects, secretly abducted from distant colonies. "Admiral Santos needs to see this immediately," Marcus said, already compiling the data. But his hand hesitated over the transmission button. The war had been going well. Earth's forces pushing deeper into Imperial space with each passing week. This revelation could change everything. "If this goes public," Nadia warned, "there won't be any stopping the calls for total annihilation. Everything we've done to minimize civilian casualties, all our precision strikes, it'll turn into a war of extermination." Marcus knew she was right. The carefully measured response that had characterized Earth's campaign would evaporate in the face of such barbarism. But could they ethically withhold this information? His deliberation was interrupted by a priority alert. Imperial forces had been detected approaching the system. A lot of them. "They know what we found," Nadia realized. "They're coming to destroy the evidence." Marcus made his decision. "Begin data transfer to the Defiant. Everything we've discovered goes to Admiral Santos. She needs to know what we're really fighting." The Imperial fleet arrived faster than expected, a sign of their desperation. As evacuation alarms blared through the facility, Marcus and Nadia worked frantically to secure their findings. But there was something else in the data, something that nagged at Marcus's analytical mind. "Wait," he said, stopping mid-transfer. "Look at these genetic profiles again. The modifications, the alterations, they're not just experiments. They were working towards something specific." Nadia leaned in, her eyes widening as she followed his logic. The Empire's leadership, their supposed genetic superiority, is artificial, Marcus finished. They're not naturally evolved at all. The entire Imperial hierarchy is built on stolen human genetics, modified and enhanced over centuries. The facility shook as the first Imperial bombardment began. But Marcus barely noticed, his mind racing with the implications. This wasn't just evidence of atrocity. It was the Empire's deepest secret, the foundation of their supposed supremacy. "We need to get this to the Resistance," he said suddenly. "Not just Admiral Santos. The Craxan people need to know what their leaders really are." Nadia nodded, understanding immediately. It would shatter their entire social structure. The genetic hierarchy that keeps the lower castes in line is a lie, Marcus finished, one we can expose. They worked faster now, transmitting data through multiple channels, some to Earth Command, others to resistance contacts. The Imperial bombardment intensified, but advanced shields developed using insights from Marcus's research held firm. When the facility's AI announced that Imperial dropships were approaching, Marcus knew they had to make a choice: complete the data transfer or evacuate. The decision was made for them when Krelvor himself appeared on their comm screen. "The Resistance has received your transmission," the rebellion leader said. "What you've discovered, it changes everything. But you must not let the Empire capture you. They'll extract any details we missed, find ways to counter the revelation." Marcus looked at Nadia, saw his own resolve mirrored in her eyes. "We understand, but we need time to complete the transfer." "My teams are moving into position," Krelvor assured them. "We'll buy you what time we can." The next hour was a blur of activity. As resistance forces engaged Imperial troops outside, Marcus and Nadia worked to transfer every scrap of data they could. The evidence had to be comprehensive, undeniable. When Imperial forces finally breached the facility's outer defenses, resistance fighters, led by Krelvor himself, held them back long enough for the scientists to reach the emergency evacuation pods. As they launched into space, Marcus watched Imperial ships trading fire, with both Earth vessels and what appeared to be stolen Imperial cruisers now flying resistance colors. "The truth is out," Nadia said quietly. "There's no stopping it now." Marcus nodded, knowing that the war had just entered its final, most dangerous phase. The Empire wouldn't just be fighting to maintain control now, they would be fighting for their very identity, their claim to power. Like any cornered animal, they would be at their most deadly. But as their pod was picked up by a waiting Earth vessel, Marcus felt a strange sense of peace. The Empire had built their power on lies and stolen humanity. Now humanity would take that power apart, piece by piece, not just with weapons but with truth. The real question was, how do you destroy an empire built on lies? The answer: you expose those lies to the light of day and watch the foundation crumble. The Imperial throne world of Kraxos burned, not from orbital bombardment or weapons fire, but from revolution. The streets of its crystal cities blazed with the light of liberation as millions of lowercase Kraxans, armed with the truth about their rulers, rose up against centuries of oppression. Caden Walsh, Earth's chief negotiator, watched from the conference chamber of the neutral station Unity as news feeds showed the uprising spreading across Imperial space. Beside him, Zora Kim, commander of the combined Earth resistance fleet, studied tactical displays showing Imperial forces turning on each other as the truth about their leader's origins sparked civil war. "The Empire is eating itself alive," Zara observed, her expression grim. "Their entire society is unraveling." Before them stood the remaining Imperial leadership, not in person, but as holograms. Their once proud bearing was gone, replaced by desperate fury, as their genetic secret destroyed everything they had built. "You think this changes anything?" High Commander Vexthor snarled, his enhanced features now a mockery of the superiority he claimed. "We still command powerful fleets. We can still burn 1,000 worlds." "Your fleets are deserting by the hour," Zara replied calmly. "Your own people have turned against you. This war is over." Caden stepped forward. This was the moment he had prepared for, perhaps the most crucial negotiation in human history. "What happens next is your choice. Continue fighting, and you'll be destroyed. Not by us, but by your own people, or accept our terms." "Terms?" Another Imperial leader scoffed. "You would dare dictate terms to us?" "Yes," Caden said simply, "because unlike you, we understand that true strength lies not in dominance, but in unity. Not in forcing submission, but in earning trust." He gestured, and the holoprojector displayed a new document, the framework for galactic reconstruction. A new coalition, equal representation for all species, no more genetic hierarchies, no more rule through fear, a chance to build something better than empire. "You expect us to surrender everything we've built?" Vex Thor demanded. No, Caden corrected. We expect you to help build something greater. Your people's achievements, they're real ones, not those built on stolen genetics, have value. Their culture, their history, it doesn't all have to be lost. On dozens of worlds, the fighting began to slow as the proposal was broadcast across all frequencies. The resistance, led by Krelvor, had already signaled their support. Other species, long dominated by the Empire, saw an opportunity for true independence while maintaining the benefits of cooperation. You have 1 hour to decide, Zara announced. After that, we stop holding back the revolution your lies have sparked. The Imperial leaders vanished, leaving Caden and Zara alone in the chamber. Outside the viewport, Earth ships and resistance vessels flew joint patrols, a sight that would have been unimaginable months ago. Do you think they'll accept? Zara asked. They don't have a choice, Caden replied. The real question is what comes after. Building is harder than destroying. Creating trust is harder than enforcing obedience. The next few weeks would prove him right. As the Empire formally surrendered, the work of rebuilding began. Earth took a leading role not through force, but through example. Human adaptability and innovation, combined with a commitment to justice rather than vengeance, showed the galaxy a new way forward. Admiral Santos oversaw the integration of Earth and Resistance fleet operations. Dr. Cole and his team worked to undo the genetic manipulation that had created the Imperial hierarchy, while preserving beneficial advances in medical science. Across former Imperial space, joint reconstruction teams helped rebuild worlds damaged in the fighting. 1 year after the Battle of Helios Nexus, representatives from 50 species gathered on Earth to sign the Galactic Charter. As Caden watched them take their seats in the newly constructed Chamber of Cooperation, he felt a presence beside him. James Harrison, who had witnessed the spark of this war with Victoria Blackwood's death, stood watching the proceedings. Do you think she would have approved of how it ended? He asked quietly. Caden considered the question. The war had cost millions of lives, but it had ended not in destruction, but in transformation. The Empire's fall had created an opportunity for something new, something built on cooperation rather than conquest. I think she would have seen it as proof that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our tactics, he replied. It's our ability to imagine a better future and work to make it real. As the charter was signed, a new era began. The galaxy would remember this not just as the time humanity defeated an empire, but as the moment when justice triumphed over power, when truth overcame lies, and when the dream of genuine cooperation between species became reality. The real question had never been about how to win the war. It had been about what victory should look like. And humanity's answer had changed the galaxy forever.